We are looking at Plato's Meno. This is a text that fundamentally changed how humanity understands the very nature of knowledge itself. I mean, we're talking logical traps, live experiments, and even real historical death threats. Let's get into it.
But it all begins with one ultimate question. How do you become a good human being? Seriously, pause and think about that for a second. Is moral goodness something you're just born with? Like it's baked right into your DNA? Is it something you pick up through trial and error? Or could it actually be taught to you in a classroom by a teacher? Humanity has been fighting over this for millennia, and we are still asking it today.
Section 1, the ultimate human question. Okay, let's set the scene. Imagine ancient Athens, around 385 BCE. We've got two very different guys sitting down to hash this out. On one side, we have Meno. He's a wealthy, overly confident, incredibly entitled young aristocrat who is very used to winning debates and getting exactly what he wants. On the other side, we have Socrates, barefoot, unwashed, and relentlessly logical. He's a philosopher who basically spends his entire day annoying the rich and powerful by asking them impossibly simple questions. So Meno struts right up to Socrates and hits him with our big question, specifically asking if arete can be taught. Now, arete translates to excellence or virtue. Meno is essentially asking, hey, how do I become an excellent human being? And Socrates, well, he does what he does best. He totally flips the script. He tells Meno, look, I can't tell you a virtue can be taught because I don't even know what virtue itself is. And frankly, I've never met anyone who does. Meno thinks this is incredibly easy. He proudly rattles off this massive list of virtues. He says a man's virtue is running public affairs, a woman's is managing the home, there's a virtue for children, one for the elderly, you get the idea. But Socrates immediately points out a huge logical flaw. He calls this a swarm of virtues. It's literally like asking someone what is a bee, and they just give you a list of queen bees, worker bees, and bumblebees. Meno has totally failed to answer what the single underlying essence of virtue actually is. What is the one common form that makes all of those different things virtuous? Section 2, the paradox of learning. Now, as you can imagine, this leads to immense frustration. Every single time Meno tries to offer up a new definition of virtue, Socrates completely dismantles his smooth, well-rehearsed speeches using very basic, undeniable logic. Meno's confidence is just entirely shattered. In fact, Meno gets so utterly fed up that he throws out one of the most famous insults in ancient literature. He tells Socrates that he looks and acts exactly like a flat torpedo fish, which is an electric stingray. He says, my mind and my tongue are totally numb. Basically, Socrates has shocked all the false confidence right out of him. Socrates just chuckles and accepts the comparison, but he clarifies that he only numbs other people because he himself is totally numb and confused. He just wants to search for the truth together. That feeling of total mental numbness and confusion actually has a specific name. The Greeks called it aporia. If you've ever felt completely and totally lost while trying to learn something new, you have experienced aporia. It feels super uncomfortable, but Socrates argues that aporia is absolutely the required essential first step toward true wisdom. You have to flush out your false confidence and admit you don't know the answer before real, genuine learning can even begin. But notice how Meno tries to weaponize this confusion. He creates this slippery, insidious logical trap that we now call Meno's paradox. It goes like this. First, if you already know what you're looking for, you can't search for it, because you already know it. Second, if you don't know what you're looking for, you can't search for it, because you wouldn't even recognize it if you found it. Meno is essentially threatening the very concept of human learning here. He's claiming that searching for knowledge is completely impossible. No way, right? Section 3, the slave boy experiment. So Socrates completely refuses to accept this lazy debater's trick. To defeat the paradox, he introduces this wild, highly controversial counterargument, and then he actually backs it up with an interactive geometry experiment on an uneducated boy. Socrates introduces the theory of anamnesis, or recollection. Now brace yourself, because this is a mind-bending idea. He suggests that the human soul is immortal and has already seen everything in the universe in its past lives. Because of that, it already possesses all knowledge. When we are born, the trauma of birth simply makes us forget. So quote-unquote learning isn't putting new information into an empty brain. It is literally just remembering what we already know. Think of your brain like a preloaded hard drive. Philosophy doesn't download new files, it just helps you unscramble the file paths so you can finally open them. To prove this crazy theory, Socrates calls over a young boy who has absolutely zero mathematical education. Socrates doesn't teach him a single thing, he only asks him questions. First, he draws a 2x2 square with an area of 4. Then he asks the boy how to draw a square with double the area, an area of 8. The boy naturally guesses you just double the sides to 4. But Socrates shows that a 4 by 4 square creates an area of 16, which is way too big. So the boy guesses 3. That gives an area of 9. Still wrong. The boy is now in a total state of aporia. Then Socrates draws a grid, cuts the squares in half with diagonal lines, and just guides the boy to independently discover that the diagonal line creates the perfect 8-foot square. The boy figured out a complex geometric truth entirely on his own, which proved to Socrates that the knowledge was locked inside him all along. Section 4. The search for teachers. Let's see how Socrates and Meno build on this. They've just proven that inquiry is actually possible. So they use the method of hypothesis to logically deduce that since virtue is beneficial, it must be a kind of knowledge. And if virtue is knowledge, well, it absolutely must have teachers and students. So they go looking for the teachers. Socrates tests this theory by looking at the absolute greatest, most legendary Athenian fathers in history. We're talking guys like Pericles and Themistocles. These men were powerful, highly respected, supposedly full of virtue, and they spent absolute fortunes educating their sons in music, rustling, and horsemanship. But despite all that money and effort, their sons turned out to be lazy, mediocre, or just completely corrupt. It is a devastating historical takedown. It proves that even the absolute greatest men in Athens totally failed to teach virtue to their own kids. Well, this completely enrages a politician named Anamnesis, who had joined the conversation. He sees this as a massive insult to Athenian history. He stands up and delivers this terrifying, furious threat to Socrates, basically warning him that it is very easy to do people harm in Athens. And the historical context here is chilling because original readers would know that Anamnesis actually followed through on this threat. He was literally one of the men who later put Socrates on trial and had him executed for corrupting the youth. Section 5. Knowledge versus true opinion. So, with Anamnesis storming off, we're left with a massive mystery. If virtue cannot be taught by great men, because they clearly couldn't even teach it to their sons, how on earth did these great men achieve such excellent things in the first place? Socrates solves this by introducing a brilliant thought experiment called the road to Larissa. Imagine person A has walked the road to Larissa before, they know every single turn. That is knowledge. Now imagine person B has never been there, has no map, but makes a completely 100% lucky guess on which path to take. By sheer luck, they guide everyone to the exact same destination at the exact same time. So in practice, a lucky guess achieves the exact same short-term result as true knowledge. So the crucial point here is understanding the difference between knowledge and what the Greeks called orthodoxa, or true opinion. True opinion is getting the right answer or doing the right thing without actually understanding the reason why it is right. It's like guessing C on a multiple-choice physics exam and getting it right, but having zero clue about the actual math behind it. Sure, you get the point, but you completely lack that deep philosophical understanding. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why knowledge is superior. Socrates compares true opinions to the mythical statues of the sculptor Daedalus. These statues were said to be so incredibly lifelike that if you didn't tie them down to a pedestal, they would magically run away in the middle of the night. True opinions are exactly the same way. If you just have a lucky guess or a belief you haven't really thought deeply about, it easily slips out of your mind the second you face emotional doubt or fake news. You have to tie your opinions down with rational logic and proof to permanently turn them into knowledge. Section 6. Why Meno matters today. This brings us right to the grand conclusion of the dialogue, bridging the gap from ancient Athens all the way to our world today. Socrates concludes that the great Athenian leaders didn't actually have tied down knowledge of virtue. They operated entirely on true opinion. Therefore, virtue often comes not from schooling or studying, but as a kind of divine gift of true opinion. It's a flash of unanchored inspiration. And honestly, this framework is incredibly relevant right now. Just think about modern education and standardized testing. We so often reward students just for memorizing facts, essentially giving them true opinion, but entirely skipping the deep Socratic questioning that actually builds true, tied-down knowledge. Or think about artificial intelligence. An AI can predict the right answer perfectly, but does it actually possess conceptual understanding, or is it just the ultimate illusion of knowledge? Finally, it's a huge warning about moral leadership. We are constantly surrounded by charismatic leaders who can give incredibly inspiring speeches, but whose underlying beliefs are completely unanchored by wisdom. Which leaves us with this final, profound question to consider. What does it actually mean to know something in an age where answers are literally instant? The Meno isn't just some old, dusty story. It's a direct invitation. It empowers us to embrace our own confusion, to seek out our own aporia, and to actively question our beliefs so we can actually tie them down, rather than just passively accepting the opinions handed to us.
Please like and subscribe.